The reason I brought up Scatterboo is because today I posed the question to my Beyond the Box Score co-hosts, Scatterboo or Ginty?
It's a disgusting question to have to ponder if you have Ashton Genty exposure here. But yeah, I mean, Cam Scatterboo is like cult hero status right now. The Giants are not only passing the ball to Scatterboo, they're running smoke for him and lining him up at wide receiver. It's like Scott Barrett became the offensive coordinator on a couple of these play designs. So I don't even want to answer that question because it makes me too upset.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
We're talking mind-blowing fantasy football statistical and analytical takeaways. Going to the mattresses here on Fantasy Football Daily, I have got two of the smartest people in fantasy football, Jacob Gibbs and Ryan Heath, joining me today. We're going to unpack some of Jacob and Ryan's favorite statistical and analytical takeaways, not only from week 3, but from the season combined. We're heading into week 4. We're starting to have more data. We're starting to have a larger sample size of what teams are, what players are, situations we can count on, and some situations we should be panicking about. This is a really, really fun one that we've been planning for several weeks now. Let's go ahead and get this one started right off the top. Ryan, is Quinshon Judkins a potential league winner at the running back position? Unbelievable performance. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery completely shut down by the Green Bay Packers in week 1. Jacory Croskey-Merritt and Austin Eckler completely shut down in week 2. And Quinshon Judkins just goes wild in week 3. Cleveland gets the win, but the story is Judkins. And Ryan, it's wild with Judkins because Quinshon Judkins, there are fantasy managers holding Judkins bags in like the 12th round, the 13th round. He fell during that fear-induced period of time where we thought maybe he wouldn't play. So Judkins right now looks like a potential league winner to me. What do the numbers tell you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite at league winner yet, but it's certainly going that direction, especially, relative to that very late round ADP that you were able to get him at for a lot of the offseason. So for perspective here, Judkins did not practice with the Browns until exactly 10 days before this week 3 game. And what we saw is they just fed him as a total workhorse on the early downs. 18 of the backfield's 19 carries, 100% of the snaps inside the 10-yard line, ended up with over 18 expected fantasy points on the day. That's a number that only 3 running backs are averaging more than this season. So yeah, we really saw highest end workhorse usage. The reason I don't say bell cow is because we are still seeing Jerome Ford kind of playing this third down role, and in games where the Browns are not just in a neutral game script or a positive game script, I don't think Judkins is really going to be playing enough to be giving you those every week, like top 12 scores or anything like that. But I mean, he looks amazing. It's hard to argue that he looks great. 6th best in missed tackles forced per attempt this year, 4th best in yards after contact per attempt, behind only Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and James Cook. So yeah, I'm ranking Judkins as a top 18 running back for the rest of the season. You would really need the Browns defense to kind of continue stepping up and keeping all of these games like very gross and very close. That is not really what Vegas expects in the look ahead lines this morning. But yeah, there are definitely scenarios where Judkins kind of gets into that top 14, fringe top 12 range if he keeps up the efficiency and everything continues to go as well as possible for the Cleveland Browns. But yeah, just saying that kind of makes me like, okay, we need to hedge a little bit more. Top 18 is where I'm at.
Hey, Jacob, you talked about this with Judkins. It was your tweet where you talked about the yards after contact. And when it comes to Judkins, like, we have all these question marks about the Browns, but I think that we'll start seeing a few over the next few weeks, 25 touch Quinshon Judkins weeks. for better or for worse, I think they're committed to ramping him up. We saw it in that game that they were completely annihilated by Baltimore, and they seem to have force-fed Judkins touches in that one. Are you sort of with Ryan that you're going to have him as like a mid-level RB2? Talk about your Judkins takeaways as well.
Yeah, so they really scaled his role up from his first game to his second game. I thought it was encouraging that in his first game, he started and they were giving it to him a lot, but he ended up with like a 30% snap rate or whatever. In week three, his second week, the snap rate was only like 59% or something, which is a big improvement, but not where you want to see it for a running back. But to Ryan's point, almost all of the touches were going to him when it was like all things equal. We got a lot of like 2-minute drill kind of situations in this game, which kind of affected the overall snap rate numbers. He had a 75% snap rate across the first 3 drives. So it was like really all him. So you're looking at basically an early down running back only for now. And it's an offense that, if it does go away from Flacco, then we would be nervous, of what it might look like. But yeah, to your point about yards after contact, he has been so good on his own that it makes sense that he'll probably become the offensive engine at some point. So I think low end RB2 is about right. You're going to have some weeks where he's frustrating, because he's a running back on the Browns, but he's done everything he can. And this is an unbelievably encouraging start.
Yeah, we're very, very interested in Quinshon Judkins. He's a player that's going to significantly rise up the dynasty rankings, I'm sure on Fantasy Points and on many other sites. Jacob, your first takeaway is on a player that Ryan and I were all over this entire offseason, many at Fantasy Points, Brett Whitefield, Scott Barrett. We were all sort of head over heels with Tetairoa McMillan. What are the numbers telling you through 3 weeks? He's had at least 8 targets in every single game now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people think that I only care about rookies, and I'm not beating those allegations today. I'm obsessed with T-Mac. He's looked so good. We saw the first read target rate push up to 40% in week 3, which is a high number for anybody. Any wide receiver 1, that's a high number, but especially a rookie. And I think this is what we can expect. So I do a podcast, it's called Beyond the Box Score. And like last week, we dove into all of the awesome stuff that we got from Fantasy Points data, looking at the types of routes that these players are running. And T-Mac stood out to me as one of the most unusually high vertically breaking route rates of any receiver, any wide receiver 1. I thought he was going to have a ton of horizontally breaking routes. That's something Ryan and I had speculated on going into the year, was that Dave Canales, his wide receiver 1, gets a lot of these H break routes. I think that's where we're going to settle in. But these first couple of weeks, the Panthers were chasing points a lot. We saw here in it wasn't exactly neutral, but like not playing from way behind game in week 3. This is, I think, more representative of what we're going to get. The fantasy points haven't come yet. And so I think he's like one of the clearest buys, and we have a lot. We have a lot of buys, especially a receiver. But to me, his name's at the very top because he's winning all over the place. He's winning with vertical separation. He's doing like the few questions that we had. Could he win down the field as a vertical separator? He's checking those boxes, and we know that he can crush on horizontally breaking routes. We know he can win to the catch point. We know he can win after the catch. So really the only concerns are like offensive environment, but like that's the same thing for a lot of these receivers. That's the same thing for Malik Neighbors. That's the same thing for Brian Thomas Jr. And to me, he looks like close to as good of a player as Brian Thomas Jr. That's a really ridiculous thing to say after just 3 weeks, but like the separation scores back it up. My eyes back it up. He's winning out there in a lot of different ways. So I'm extremely excited about McMillan.
Yeah, and Ryan, we love when the numbers match up with guys that just completely pass the eye test. And every single week, McMillan does something just ridiculous. Week 1 and week 2, it was a couple of like near completions that were incompletions where you're like, what is this guy doing? He catches nearly everything. He's able to high point the ball. He's got the ideal size. Your takeaways from McMillan early this season?
Yeah, no, honestly, not a whole lot to add other than that. Yeah, all of the numbers are great. We see the target shares coming up. He's at 15.7 expected fantasy points per game, which is 15th at the position. Yeah, the positive regression is definitely coming here. Totally agree with Jacob that he is a clear buy. And I kind of do love the Brian Thomas Jr. comparison because every film guy I talked to this season has had basically only bad things to say about how BTJ has been playing, shying away from contact, not wanting to go over the middle. But it's the complete opposite with T-Mac. Every single film guy you talk to is like, yeah, he's amazing. He looks so good. I'm so excited for him. I don't think it's even crazy to just rank McMillan straight up ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. for the rest of the season based on both as Jacob mentioned, like the offensive environment overall concerns being kind of similar for both of them. And yeah, the fact that McMillan just looks better, has the target shares to back it up, has all the peripherals to back it up, at least to the same extent Thomas Jr. does. So yeah, I absolutely am in love with this take that
Look
T-Mac
at me
is like
and Ryan,
by low.
film bros, me and Ryan Heath. He just
Yeah,
looks
that's right.
better. He looks better. It's easy.
Noted film bros. And follow-up question for Ryan. Who's the bigger ageist, you or Jacob? Which one of you dislikes age in fantasy football more, you or Jacob Gibbs?
I don't know. It might be Jacob, honestly. I feel like I psyched myself out of fading all the old guys this year when there were some older guys I probably should have been fading harder. So I don't know. I think I overreacted to myself overreacting to age stuff in 2024.
Easy to do.
There you go. And Ryan becomes a guy who is embracing the older players. And then lo and behold, James Conner goes down, season-ending injury. Mike Evans headed to the IR. So there you go, Ryan. Let's keep this one going with Tetairoa McMillan discussion. Initial lean here, guys. Let's not on the show sheet. This is off the cuff. Who would you rather roster in Dynasty, BTJ or Tetairoa McMillan? Jacob.
BTJ.
Ryan.
I think I might be at Tet McMillan now. I was not there a week ago, but another week of basically the same trends with both of them is I think I'll narrowly take T-Mac now, even in Dynasty.
It's totally fair, but like, man, the top of BTJ's outcome is I'm just the best freaking player in football.
That's a very, very good point. Someone had sort of a sobering walk me off of the cliff type comment that maybe this is just BTJ's path every single year, that he waits to ramp up until like week 5. And there's take a lot of different contexts this year. The expectation's totally different. But that one sort of woke me up and I'm like, okay, thank you for saying that. That makes me feel a little bit better than seeing him do absolutely nothing with all of these targets and us questioning everything. Shane Waldron, all that craziness. Jacob, you mentioned the podcast. Talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, Beyond the Box Score, me and Dan Schneier putting it together. We also have Adam Azer hosts on Mondays. We recap everything that we just saw from the week before. We go through 4 big topics picked by our audience. Love to keep it interactive. We have a live chat, so you can always come hang out with us there, ask questions. Ryan is on every Thursday. We do a show called Mastering Matchups. This is our first year doing it. We haven't really got into the weeds as much as we're excited to do with the matchup data because we got a lot of new stuff coming in. So we're familiarizing ourselves with these new coordinators and everything. But you guys know Ryan, all the good stuff that goes into his matchup calling at the end of the week. Looking at coverage types, blitzes, pressure rates, all this stuff, single high safety, all that, and trying to speculate on matchups that you can exploit week to week. And then in the middle of the week, it's going to be me and Dan just doing our thing. We're giving you trade targets, rest of season look. This week we're going to do an entire episode dedicated to what's happening up front with offensive lines, run schemes, how we're seeing different coordinators approach the battle up front, which offensive lines are winning and losing, how that's affecting some of these running backs that are struggling, and some of these, passing games that haven't been able to really find their rhythm. So I think that'll be a really cool show. So we just try to stay topical and keep you updated with everything you need to know.
Yeah, highly recommend everything Jacob is doing. You've been one of the more fun guests we've had this offseason. Shout out to the rest of my guests. But Jacob, he's just a lot of fun as a guest. Ryan, you are sort of the fantasy points wunderkind. You're the one who is dropping all the great statistical takeaways. You're crushing it. What does a week in the life of Ryan Heath look like content-wise for the Fantasy Football Daily audience?
So every Sunday night I drop a massive usage review thread on Twitter at RyanJ_Heath that you can check out like during Sunday Night Football. I try to be one of the first to do like a full usage review thread. Monday mornings, 5 stats to know, free article, just going over some of the biggest trends that I had noticed in the previous weekend of games. The Everything Report drops Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. That's co-written with myself and Scott Barrett. It's called that for a reason. We cover literally everything you could possibly need to know from a data perspective going forward for your fantasy teams. And then Friday mornings, advanced matchups drops, as Jacob was alluding to a little bit, kind of digging very deep into the data suite with the coverage shells, with different matchup indicators that you can use to get an edge in your DFS lineups or in your prop betting for the following week. So yeah, a lot of content, all of it over on fantasypoints.com.
Yeah, and if you want to subscribe to all of Ryan's content, as well as my written content, as well as Scott Barrett's written content, and all of the incredible tools and articles that we have accessible over at Fantasy Points, use the code Theo and get 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including Fantasy Points data, where Jacob and Ryan are pulling a ton of their awesome statistical takeaways from today's episode. Ryan, embracing the ambiguous backfields has looked like a very sharp thing for fantasy managers to have done this past offseason. You've had early season wins from Travis Etienne. We are banking on a Bhayshul Tuten breakout at some point very soon. We're going to talk about him a little later in the show. Javonte Williams has paid off very big at his ADP early on in the year. There's been a few other scenarios where the ambiguous backfields have paid off, but one of the biggest payoffs was a player sort of under the radar, but one that you were really pounding the table for on multiple shows that we did together this offseason. A big credit to you. You were sort of all over Jaylen Warren this offseason. It's very early on, but right now Jaylen Warren looks like he's really paying off, and he's getting positive quotes from Aaron Rodgers about him, which is the key to fantasy success for any Pittsburgh Steeler, is being in Rodgers' good graces. So Ryan, talk about it with Jaylen Warren. What are the numbers telling you? What is your enthusiasm level? And is your enthusiasm level higher now than it was in August?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. This is like the one veteran running back that I get to victory lap in September when everybody else is
not that old.
Yeah.
Not
saying he's that old or anything, but yeah, like this is what we do in September. We victory lap the usage for all the veteran running backs. And Warren was like my veteran running back that I was in on for basically this reason. So yeah, I'm excited about this. In week 3, after the Aaron Rodgers quotes from last week that were basically, we need to get Warren more involved. We need to get him more involved in the passing game. Steelers listen to Aaron Rodgers. Warren up at an 82% backfield carry share, 26% target share, nearly 24 expected fantasy points in week 3. All of those were career highs for Jaylen Warren. Like, fantasy managers have been screaming to get Warren more involved, get him in a bell cow role. He's better than Najee Harris for literally years. And now that Warren in a bell cow role is actually happening, I feel like there is not nearly enough excitement about this. This is what all of you have been asking for forever. And he wasn't like especially efficient on the ground, but still looked very good to my eyes for 7 missed tackles this week, second most this week behind only Jonathan Taylor, tied for the team lead in receiving yards. Basically, the only complaint is that we got an Arthur Smith special touchdown vulture on the first drive where Warren had basically driven the Steelers down the entire length of the field. He got the first 2 cracks at the goal line on first and second down, didn't quite get in. There's a end zone DPI penalty on third down that gives the Steelers a new set, and Kenny Gainwell instantly subs onto the field and runs like an actual goal line play to the outside where he just walks in for the touchdown. Very tilting, but literally aside from that one play, Gainwell had almost no impact on the game here. It was just Jaylen Warren as the Steelers bell cow. I'm very excited about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, Caleb Johnson is so far and so deep in the doghouse after his play on special teams over the last couple of weeks that I would not be surprised if Caleb Johnson just never has a significant role at any point in his rookie season. Warren is very locked in seemingly to this passing down role now, which is the most important part of that you can have for a fantasy running back. So I actually like Warren rest of season over some of these other veteran running backs we've seen these early kind of usage breakouts for. I would rather have Warren than Javonte Williams going forward, especially with how we need to downgrade this Cowboys offense efficiency-wise, especially with CeeDee Lamb on the shelf with a high ankle sprain for probably the next few weeks. I would take Warren over a Travis Etienne just because he doesn't have a Bhayshul Tuten breathing down his neck. Similar thoughts with like J.K. Dobbins. All of these like kind of volume bet veteran guys, Warren is currently my favorite of all of them.
Yeah, I love that takeaway. The only one I would sort of try to argue with you about is Dobbins, but I'm just sort of a Dobbins believer there. But yeah, you were absolutely right when it comes to Warren, and I think that the underneath passing down work where Warren sort of as the intermediate target for Aaron Rodgers, there's really not a whole lot of target earners on this offense. So I think I'm with you, Ryan. You were all over this one in the offseason. You deserve a ton of credit for it right now. Jacob, anything to add on Jaylen Warren?
Jaylen Warren is my guy. I love it. Everything Ryan brought up is astute, and that's basically exactly where I'm at. He's very, very good. He avoids tackles. He creates yards after their contact. He's running back 2 in yards per out run since entering the NFL behind only Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's a very, very good player, and they're loading him up. Career high, 23 touches. Never had more than 18 touches in a game. Let's go.
Let's do it. And we'll stay at the running back position. Jacob, on Sunday, this was the first week that we saw the Washington backfield without Austin Eckler. We had anticipated that we would learn a lot as fantasy managers. Jacory Croskey-Merritt shows up to the stadium in one of the dopest Sean Taylor throwback jerseys anyone's ever rocked. I expected a considerable bit more volume for him. We also saw Jeremy McNichols have a nasty touchdown. We saw Chris Rodriguez lead the backfield with 11 carries, gets fewer than 40 yards with them. What's your takeaway with Jacory Croskey-Merritt? Is this a ramp-up period? Is this what's your enthusiasm level? This is a backfield that I think is making people pull their hair out, trying to figure out what to do. Do they play a Washington back? Is this one to avoid? Or should you be buying low on Croskey-Merritt in redraft leagues? Like, where are you at on how to play this situation?
I'm going to put my enthusiasm level at a 10 out of 10. And this is going to sound silly because, we're right here right now. And we didn't like that the very first thing we saw on our screens this Sunday was Chris Rodriguez. We did not like that. Everybody got excited for Bill Croskey-Merritt. And in the same way that I'm having people tell me like, I need these points from T-Mac, like they're mad about what is happening with Tetairoa McMillan when I tell them that he's awesome out there. That's where we're at with Croskey-Merritt, who was the last running back drafted and like has had a bit of a slow ease in, which is basically what you see with every single rookie running back. They're building the role out week by week. The fact that he's playing so well is encouraging. The fact that his offense is playing so well is encouraging. The offense just put up 41, and a lot of that was due to special teams and stuff like that, but put points on the board, moved the ball with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, and the run game is working exceptionally well, which is what we saw last year too. And Croskey-Merritt, I mean, shout out Theo. Like, we were talking about this summer. Like, this guy was brought in to fit this run game. He's exactly what Cliff Kingsbury likes, the inside zone stuff, all this stuff out of shotgun. He's phenomenal at operating that because his stop ability is unreal. He's extremely, extremely quick with the acceleration in and out of his cuts. And we're seeing that result in him navigating the middle extremely well. He's gaining positive yards at one of the highest rates of any running back. He's avoiding tackles. He's creating yards after contact. That's what he does. He's running back 1 in the NFL in points per touch, fantasy points per touch. He's faced the highest percentage of his runs he's faced stacked boxes on in the NFL. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, even with stacked boxes 41% of the time. Running back 7, yards after contact per attempt out of 38 qualifiers. 64% of his runs, this is all per the fantasy points status suite, 64% of his runs have gained 3 or more yards. That's running back 8. 46% of his runs have gained 5 or more yards. Running back 2, behind only Jordan Mason. So the run game is cooking, and he is cooking. McNichols looked great. That was an awesome run. And Chris Rodriguez looked great too. But like, that guy was inactive to start the
Yeah.
year because they believe in Bill. They traded away the running back. They immediately had this guy in as a 7th-round rookie. I think the role is only going to continue to grow. And the fact that they had him out there doing pass game stuff at the beginning of the game. They started Rodriguez, but in the first half, their snap rates were almost identical. But people didn't realize it because Rodriguez was the one getting all the touches. So what the hell was Bill doing? If he was out there playing snaps but not getting the ball, they were having him work on other stuff, pass protection, running routes, stuff like that, getting his timing down. They're in a screen to him. To me, this is all extremely encouraging because it means we could see an expanded version of this roll down the stretch.
Yeah, I love your enthusiasm level here. And maybe the whole thesis with Croskey-Merritt should have been that this is more of a player that ramps up in the second half of the season. You bring up the fact that it was a player that really didn't play last year at all. And the ramp up period could be taking a little bit longer. We saw the big week 1. Just quick follow up. You mentioned the passing game briefly. Do you think that we're start seeing when Jaden Daniels returns just a few opportunistic targets for Jacory Croskey-Merritt? Can he be an opportunistic pass catcher? Not necessarily a player that has schemed up usage in the passing game, but a guy who can give us maybe 2 or 3 catches a game.
I think so. The thing is, like, there was none of that in college. The receiving metrics were awful, and people will point to that. But we see sometimes that doesn't really matter. That does change sometimes. Everything I saw on film from him in college in the preseason and so far is that he's a very confident and calm player. A lot of these rookies come in and kind of overrun things, drop the ball. They're like, it seems like the game's moving too fast for them. It seems like it's already slowed down for him. And I would think that, like, if he gets those opportunities, he will be fine.
Ryan, a player that Croskey-Merritt was one that on School of Scott, we were sort of talking about for a long, long time, Fantasy Football Daily, Dynasty Life. We were packing bags with him in round 18, round 5 of rookie drafts in Dynasty. But a player that I was pounding the table for to draft inside of round 4 in redraft and taking at the 102 behind Ashton Genty in Dynasty drafts was Omarion Hampton. Really, really rough start for me in weeks 1 and week 2. Looks like we finally have the breakout performance in week 3. And that is combined with now a big injury to Najee Harris. What are the numbers telling you about Omarion Hampton, your enthusiasm level for him moving forward, coming off of this big week 3? And I will add also, this was the first week we saw him used in the passing game, ends up with, I believe, 6 receptions in a huge win over Denver.
Yeah, so we'll start with that. The biggest point to me there is the change in usage in the passing game. We had seen the Chargers throw to their backfield at near NFL low rates in weeks 1 and 2, and the targets were being relatively split between Hampton and Najee Harris. So Hampton in week 3 had a 12.8% target share versus just 6.6% in weeks 1 and 2. That was where I thought he looked best and the most smooth, was as a pass catcher, which makes sense. That is kind of was one of like the better things about his prospect profile, is that he could do it all. He could be a 3-down back. You could target him in the passing game. He could be a productive player that way. So moving forward, that definitely helps his outlook for me a lot, assuming the Chargers will continue to let him play on passing downs, give him those occasional checkdowns, let him create that way. That stuff's really great. Before the Najee Harris injury, him and Hampton were in basically a perfectly even 50-50 split. After the Harris injury, Hampton just immediately went right back up to the role that he had through the first 7 quarters of the season, which is like an 88% snap share, every single backfield touch. Still not like particularly efficient as a runner. And I know Brett Whitefield is still not really that impressed with him as a runner. I know everybody says he lacks like a lot of the lateral agility that you would want to see from like a highest end running back. But I think all of that is very unlikely to matter in fantasy football when he is getting essentially every single touch. The Chargers have seen or have shown zero interest in involving Hassan Haskins or Kamani Vidal on the practice squad at all this year. I think that probably continues. I think Hampton probably continues to settle in. And there's also a possibility that the Chargers aren't so aggressively pass heavy by the end of the year, and that in hindsight, that becomes like an, oh yeah, like it was them kind of leaning and relying on a rookie running back that is still kind of catching up to NFL speed. Of course, they were so pass heavy. They could become a little bit more balanced as the season goes on. So yeah, I'm very bullish on Hampton overall, just because of how amazing this role should continue to be. I am going to rank him above Ashton Jeanty for the rest of the season, who saw a step back in his workload and his usage in week 3. Yeah, Hampton is just kind of on the RB1, RB2 borderline to me for the rest of the season. And yeah, I don't think that that's an overreaction at all.
Are we going to talk about Cam Scatterbo today?
Would we? Yeah, let's absolutely add some Cam Scatterbo. But before we do Cam Scatterbo, Jacob, are you in line with Ryan on your level of enthusiasm for Hampton? Are you sort of above Ryan here, below him, or right in line with your rest of season outlook for Omarion Hampton?
Right in line. I was nervous about this Chargers offense a little bit when we got the Rashawn Slater injury, but everything has looked good since then. They've faced some, they've just run the gauntlet here in the AFC West, passed the tough test here against the Broncos. Love to see the run game get going. Definitely, like, wheels up for Hampton in his role. I think he's clearly ahead of Jeanty. The reason I brought up Scatterbo is because today I posed the question to my Beyond the Box Score co-hosts: Scatterbo or Jeanty? You've got 2 running backs for bad teams that can create on their own, but their line's not doing much for them, and one of them catches passes and one of them doesn't.
It's a disgusting question to have to ponder if you have Ashton Jeanty exposure here. But yeah, I mean, Cam Scatterbo is like cult hero status right now. The Giants are not only passing the ball to Scatterbo, they're running smoke for him and lining him up at wide receiver. It's like Scott Barrett became the offensive coordinator on a couple of these play designs. So I don't even want to answer that question because it makes me too upset. But Ryan, take away that Jacob Gibbs galaxy brain question.
Yeah, I love how you posed it, because I think you're exactly right in that Scatterbo's role is probably just going to be better, especially for the next month or so, or however long it takes for Tyrone Tracy to come back, and probably even beyond then, if we're being honest. But I don't think I can rank Scatterbo ahead of Jeanty rest of season, just because of the conviction that we should have on Jeanty's overall talent and the upside he has as a player. He can earn passing down snaps as the season goes on. In fact, I expect that to happen eventually. So yeah, I've got to take Jeanty over him rest of season, but in terms of who would I rather start in week 4, I think Scatterbo is probably the answer.
Next month, it's probably Scatterbo.
It's crazy to even think about that one. I think it's more of a pro Scatterbo argument than necessarily a negative Jeanty argument, but I do agree. I think that the whole week 4 could be a Jeanty week. Vegas has got to answer some questions internally. This is really bad. They go from winning in week 1 to getting really exposed in week 2 and week 3. Now they play the Chicago Bears in week 4. So a little bit softer defense for Jeanty to go against. We've heard Pete Carroll sort of give some positive coach speak to Jeanty. We're just not seeing it with the usage. It's weird, guys. It's very, very weird. But yeah, Cam Scatterbo, if you drafted him, you're feeling just great about things right now. The usage is exactly what you want to see. It's one of the things that's consistently working for the Giants against the Chiefs. Really, the only thing that was working was Cam Scatterbo. So I think we're going to see more of that. Jacob, talk about Chris Olave. We see Kellen Moore taking over this year as head coach in New Orleans. The Saints are not a good team, but a couple of great things are coming together usage-wise. We've seen Juwan Johnson take over this really, really high-level tight end role, but Chris Olave is a monster target earner through 3 weeks of play. Where are you at on him and his rest of the season outlook?
Yeah, so Olave just stays undervalued for whatever reason. But he, when out there, is tremendously productive on a per route basis. And that's what we're seeing again here, where his target per route run rate is through the roof. And the efficiency hasn't quite caught up. And maybe it just will be an issue, with Spencer Rattler, and this version of the offense maybe just won't be as good as what we have with Derek Carr, who, fantasy points data would show in a lot of ways is probably underrated as well. But what we have seen from Olave in the past is that he is, no matter what the circumstances, somebody who's giving you over 2 yards per route run. And so to me, to see him in this role where it's elevated beyond what we've seen ever before with all the usage-based stuff, it makes sense that the yardage efficiency might catch up to what we've seen in the past. I mean, just even like in week 2, Spencer Rattler just missed him, just barely missed him. Absolutely nasty route by Olave to get a target in the end zone, just barely missed him. If he connects on that, then his yard per route run rate is above 2. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a weirdly inefficient start. But all of the route concepts that we've seen there, I've really liked, including all the pre-snap motion stuff. So we saw Kellen Moore make Keenan Allen the highest fantasy scorer ever on pre-snap motion routes during the time we have that data available, just on those routes. And then CeeDee Lamb, the year before that, he took his spot. CeeDee Lamb was the previous holder for most fantasy points on pre-snap motion routes. We're now seeing this go to Olave, 25 routes as the pre-snap motion player. No one else has more than 20 in the NFL. He has 8 targets as the pre-snap motion player. Only Deebo Samuel has more. He's also getting end zone targets. He had 2 end zone targets in week 3. He has an end zone target in every game, but no touchdowns to show for it. So I'm looking at it and it's like, man, everything you could possibly ask for is there from a role perspective. And the State's offense isn't good, but it's better than we thought it would be. It's actually, like, in terms of catchable air yards, like, it's actually been pretty functional, and they're playing extremely fast. So there's a lot of plays overall. And Olave's perceived value hasn't changed at all. Like, he's basically exactly where he was coming into the season, which I didn't feel was appropriate. I thought that was way too low. But we now have confirmation of the offense being better than we thought it could be, playing at the extreme tempo that we thought it might, and Olave being this alpha type of wide receiver 1. So to me, is like one of the clearest buys. I know you guys are probably sick of hearing this every single year with Chris Olave, but like on paper, this looks great right now.
Yeah, 37 targets through 3 weeks played. Sunday, we saw a season high in points scored. Ryan, where are you at on this one when it comes to Olave and your initial reaction to the Kellen Moore offense through 3 games played?
Yeah, I mean, he leads all wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game. The Kellen Moore offense is as fast-paced and as awesome as it's always been. This was something that I harped on a lot during the offseason, which is that Kellen Moore pretty much makes life so much better and easier for all of his wide receivers, and consequently makes it harder for his running backs, at least in the receiving game, just because he really loves to scheme up and design all of these targets for his receivers, use them in motion like Jacob's been talking about. And that's just like an efficiency hack, an efficiency cheat code. It's a volume hack and cheat code when you combine it with his pace of play. So yeah, I would agree that Olave is a buy. He looks like one in Dynasty, especially. I'm just thinking back to, like, you could get him for like a late first or like 3 seconds, like even cheaper this offseason. Like, he was dead to people in Dynasty this offseason. If I can buy it even like 120% of those prices, I would be doing that right now in that format. So yeah, Olave is looking great. And it does lead into the next player I want to talk about a little bit, though.
Yeah, last week I sent a TJ Hawkinson for Chris Olave deal, and I got a little bit on top of Olave, like a third or fourth in an FFPC Dynasty League. So of course, tight end premium, but it's the targets I'm chasing, and it's sort of a Moneyball approach to Olave for Dynasty managers, because you're getting the concussion discount, where the air yards have always been there, the target share has always been there. He has first round pedigree. And we used to have to pay so much for him. Now he's sort of cheap. And this is by far the most targets he's ever earned on a 3-week period at any point in his career. So I would try to go and kick the tires and pick up some Chris Olave. If Jacob is correct, he's going to cost a lot more in a few weeks. But Ryan, you prefaced this one. I talked about the positivity surrounding Juwan Johnson's early usage. Jacob talked about Chris Olave. It's been sort of a 20 targets for Rashid Shaheed, but you have some concerns about Alvin Kamara.
I do, yeah. So we've got 3 games now in 2025, and Kamara has been below a 5% target share in 2 out of 3. And that's really insane because we basically have never seen Alvin Kamara be this lightly targeted in his career. From all of 2021 through 2024, back as far as the fantasy points data repository goes, I could only find one single game below a 5% target share for Kamara in a 4-year period. Last year, he was not below a 12% target share in any single game when you were kind of getting him as this. He led all running backs in expected fantasy points last year. Like the usage is night and day in the passing game. And that is what Kamara needs when you're on the Saints, when they're always trailing, running a bunch of plays in the hurry up. Like if you're not heavily involved in the passing game, then what is the point of you in fantasy? You're not going to be getting these positive game scripts with Kamara very often. He's not going to score very many touchdowns. So it's just really, really rough. And this is something that was somewhat foreseeable before the season. Kamara's, a lot of those expected fantasy points were on all of those running back screens that Clint Kubiak loved to spam. As we just alluded to, Kellen Moore is kind of the opposite. 14 design targets for Olave and Shaheed through 3 weeks, just 1 for Alvin Kamara. This is just not how Kellen Moore runs his offenses. Honestly, it's probably smart. I would rather be giving design touches to Olave and Shaheed than an old and dusty Alvin Kamara. I think that makes sense in terms of their offense as well. So Kamara is not even a top 24 running back to me for the rest of the season. I would be selling in redraft. I would be getting absolutely any starting lineup worthy piece for him that you can. Or if you don't need him, I would be desperately trying to get the RJ Harveys of the world, where these are guys that just haven't scored fantasy points yet, but that we expect to break out as the season goes on. I would take Bhayshul Tuten over Alvin Kamara for the rest of the season.
All day long, Bhayshul Tuten. And
let's go.
Nice professional segue from Ryan Heath, because we're going to talk about Bhayshul Tuten soon. But do you share Ryan's apprehension about the role and outlook for Alvin Kamara moving forward, Jacob?
Yeah, I didn't draft any, and I haven't for a while, and sometimes that burns me, but it's just I'm always nervous that if the, running back 1 and XFP per game stuff falls off at all, then what are we left with? And we're kind of finding out, it looks like. It's not good.
Nothing's good there. I completely agree with you. It's so weird to see Kamara with these sort of stat lines where he has 18 carries, but then not a whole lot of catches. It's sort of why wouldn't we even mix in a little bit more Kendre Miller if that's the way we're going to sort of use him? It seems like it's just a very bad fit. The one bailout would be if the season sort of unravels for New Orleans, could we see Alvin Kamara traded to another team? That's sort of the one little bailout for Kamara managers, where I think there'd be a market for him, because there's a number of teams that are sort of running back needy, and his skill set sort of translates to in a short period of time, can he help push my team into the playoffs or give me a chance to win a playoff game? I think there's going to be some coaches that might see him like that. You got to think Kamara is going to be wide open to a deal if this season unravels for New Orleans. But we talked about it a million times. We sort of had a couple of little references to it. We knew we were going to talk Bhayshul Tuten here. Jacob, time for you to shine. What are the numbers telling you about Bhayshul Tuten? What is your outlook for him for the rest of the season? To the moon. To the moon.
It's Tuten time. 18% snap rate. Pretty excited about that. No, not so much.
I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there for sure. I mean, the Tank Bigsby trade was absolutely to get Bhayshul Tuten more touches. I'm convinced on that one. And Tuten, we talk about looking the part, Tuten looks awesome. The week 2 touchdown. Then we saw the short touchdown in week 3. It just seems like it's a ticking time bomb to Tuten having a breakout game, and his breakout game might look like Devon Achane rookie year type breakout game.
Yeah, we've yet to even see the explosive plays from Tuten. What we've seen is him just consistently churning out yards after contact. I bring up the snap rate just a bit in jest, and also, so I think it might have been impacted by a shoulder injury. But also, I just want to bring it up like kind of like a corollary with what we've been talking about with like Jacory Croskey-Merritt and stuff like that, where it's like we're very excited and for good reason, but like let's not get out of control here where we're like, I need to start him. Like I need something here. Like, can I start him? And then you're getting mad about it and stuff like that. Like it's probably going to continue to be a slow build. What I've been eyeing the whole time is week 9. I think they have a week 8 bye. And yeah, we are seeing the snap rates pulled back a little bit for Travis Etienne. I think it's going to be Tuten time eventually. And that is because he's been so good, including the preseason. So this is almost 40 touches as a pro, not a single negative play for Tuten. So Javonte Williams, for comparison, he's the only running back with over 70% of his runs gaining 3 or more yards this season among running backs that have more than 20 touches. Tuten is very close. He has 17 rushes, and his rate is 82%. So like Javonte's the only one above 70%. Tuten just consistently churning out yards after contact, making people miss. And then you see him get the goal line look. It wasn't like, sometimes where a running back has a long run. This happened to Etienne in week 2 where he had a long run and then Tuten goes in, and gets some work. They just put Tuten in for that play. They trusted him to have that goal line look. And I think that's a testament to what he's done, which is consistently get these short yardage looks converted, make people miss behind the line of scrimmage. And so if we start getting the explosive plays as well, the offense has, outside of 2 guys, outside of Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, the offense has worked pretty well. Like they've been creating a lot of yards before contact. That's what a lot of ETN's looks have been. And so as I look at this, like I'm pretty optimistic overall with Liam Cohen and what he's designing here. And Tuten just absolutely is passing the eye test and the analytical test as a player. So it could be really, really exciting when it hits.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of frustration. It's sort of like there's 2 Americas here. There's the fantasy football America that's like all upset about Brian Thomas Jr. And then there's the Duval Jacksonville Jaguar fans who are like, hey guys, we could be 3-0 right now as a team. So there's a ton of like enthusiasm with what Jacksonville's building, what they're doing. But I think for them to take that next level over the second half of the season, it's going to have to be Bhayshul Tuten taking on a larger role. I mean, Tuten, we're really rooting for him. And I sometimes you have to take a step back, Ryan, when you have bags packed of a guy in Dynasty. If you have exposure in redraft, you sometimes start rooting for him and you find reasons to make arguments for him. But when it comes to Tuten, I completely agree with Jacob. I think that the big breakout games are coming. Where are you at on Tuten right now? I know you talked about him, that you would trade Kamara for him, but sort of your outlook, what are the chances that we are incorrect on these ones? Like if you had to put a percent at it.
Oh man, if I had to put a percent on like Tuten just never takes over the lead back role at any point this season, I don't know. I think it's probably like a 45-55 proposition to me where I would slightly lean toward him doing it at some point in the year. Like don't forget, guys, the point with Tuten is that in every format, he was incredibly cheap because he was a day 3 running back. And over the season, there's a good chance we have seen Liam Cohen do this before, where if a later drafted player earns a larger role, he will just give it to him and unleash him. So that's the bet with Tuten. You got to still hold, still wait. It could definitely take a while, but yeah, I've been very, very encouraged by what we've seen through 3 weeks as well. Maybe it doesn't ultimately pop at the end of the year. Maybe ETN stays relatively efficient, continues playing pretty well. But yeah, like he's getting goal line touches, guys. He's getting like design screens and taking them in for touchdowns. I'm just so overwhelmingly happy with everything we've seen from him that I even like if it doesn't ultimately end up hitting, I will consider myself like on the right side of history with Tuten when all is said and done.
Yeah, it's about the friends that we made on the way when we're talking about Bhayshul Tuten, Ryan. But yeah, I'm with you, and he's a fantastic stash. And there's always a chance that the team could move off of Travis Etienne. There's still a number of beat reporters sort of saying that this book might not be closed on this one because not only do they have a great deal of enthusiasm about Bhayshul Tuten, but the coaching staff really, really likes LaQuint Allen.
Yes.
So there's a chance we see Etienne moved, and then it would just be liftoff for Tuten. There's a chance that we see just more of a 50-50 timeshare. Jacob, you mentioned the shoulder. Tuten was in a non-contact jersey for a lot of the lead up to week 3. We could see a little bit more of a ramp up in usage heading into week 4, week 5, and this could just be a slow drip, but an exciting one. All right, guys, let's talk about it. Ryan, you have a takeaway on sort of an under the radar receiver. Talk to us about Darnell Mooney right now.
Yeah, so to me, Mooney was like an interesting kind of later-ish round sleeper that you could draft pretty late heading into the season. Obviously, the preseason injury and all of that kind of dampens that enthusiasm. But now I kind of wish I had Darnell Mooney on more benches than I actually do, just because we have seen the role pretty much come right back to what we were hoping and dreaming of here in week 3. So he was inactive in week 1. Week 2, his first week back, immediately at a 19% target share. Week 3 at a team high 26% target share. And even more notably, Drake London, while he consolidated 36% of the Falcons targets in week 1, hasn't gone over a 20% target share in either of these games since Darnell Mooney has returned. And I don't know, like it makes me a little bit nervous. Now, London has also been dealing with an injury of his own that we need to factor in and probably be patient, play the long game, and hope to God that Michael Penix doesn't look as rough as he did in week 3. But yeah, like all of last season, London was only like 50 or 100 yards ahead of Darnell Mooney, I believe, at this season's end. Like these were very close target shares through much of the year, really until the end of the season when Penix came in over the last 3 games and Mooney missed some time, where we saw like these huge alpha wide receiver 1 target shares for London. So really just my take here is I'm a lot less certain that London is like the clear alpha wide receiver 1 that I sold him to be and that we all kind of thought he would be heading into this season. So my faith is just being shaken a little bit on the actual pecking order here with the Falcons. I don't think Darnell Mooney is a better NFL receiver than London, but in terms of their fantasy outputs, I'm not actually sure that they'll be that different for the rest of the year.
Jacob, anything to add on the Mooney situation and with regards to Drake London as well?
I think I can make Ryan feel better. Darnell Mooney's awesome and an important part of the offense, but I would be like pretty unprecedented for a player who occupies such a downfield oriented role to be a significant target earner. And that's pretty much what we've always seen from him. And second, Drake London is the predominant target hog, like point blank. At USC, he had the highest target per route run rate of any receiver since I have that data available of any season dating back to 2017. It was like over 40%. And we've seen him across multiple different quarterbacks have that kind of target per route run rate. To me, it's kind of like the Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed thing, where it's like, well, this guy's really good and really fun. Like, and sometimes he even looks like he's like overtaking Olave, but it's like, man, we have a long track record of this guy, this top 10 pick, like Olave and London were. I think maybe Olave was 11 or something, being elite, like absolutely like alpha dog status. To me, the only concern with London, I guess 2. 1 is that they're not playing quite as fast as I would have liked. And 2 is that Penix has not played well. His accuracy notes are at the very bottom of the league through 3 weeks. So hopefully that sorts itself out. I think if he's healthy, I don't have any concerns with London.
And Jacob, I'm really glad you brought up this player to sort of close out our takeaways. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the best wide receiver selection you could have made maybe in fantasy right now. He's enjoying this incredible breakout season. We even saw a flu game from him where he puts up another 20 points in week 3 against the Saints. When we were worried as of Saturday evening that he might not play, he finishes with 5 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown. And that's after following up 2 games where he had at least 103 receiving yards and at least 8 catches in weeks 1 and weeks 2. The numbers, there was a lot of fear and trepidation in the marketplace with JSN, even from some very smart people this offseason, because they were worried he was going to lose this full-time slot role. But it's been anything but that. He has been thriving in his new role. Tell us what the numbers are telling you about JSN and his value to fantasy managers moving forward.
The JSN stuff is truly ridiculous. And yeah, I'm not surprised to see him winning out wide. This is a player who, like, we've seen put up these kind of ridiculous spike weeks suddenly, like at Ohio State, he had this yard per route run rate that was just absolutely through the roof. He had a game where he had like over 300 yards or whatever. And then last year, even where he's like got all this target competition, he occasionally will pop off for one of these games where he has like 180 yards and like 50% of the first 3 targets. And it's like, what the hell? Where's this been? Like, I think when he's able to like be totally locked in, he has such refinement to his route running and is like winning at the catch point that he's almost uncoverable if he has a quarterback like Geno who could like deliver it to him with anticipation and put the ball exactly where it needs to be. Like, he can get to that point over and over and over. We just have seen it not be that consistent through his first couple of years. And of course, there was a bit of a slow start to his first year with injury. But to me, it's like, if he can do this, if he can stay locked in like this all the time, and he has an offense that's like built around that, it's really, really hard to stop. And that's what we've seen. So first 3 target rate so far is 50%, which is ridiculously high. Only Puka, Malik Neighbors, and Garrett Wilson even have a rate above 40%. I've got a bunch on Jason. So actually, I want to take a quick aside on Garrett Wilson real quick. I have a question for you two. And I would love to hear Scott. Like, I'm very curious what anybody thinks about this with Wilson. Then we'll get back to some of the JSN dank stats. The Jets wide receivers and tight end group, like in its entirety, the receivers and tight ends have scored 102 PPR points, and Wilson has scored 56. So that's 55% of the wide receiver and tight end points going to him, just one player. The next highest rates are 46% for Puka, 42% for JSN, 41% for Zay Flowers through 2 games. And like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, is this at all sustainable, or are we just like sell, like easy sell?
I'll take this one. I think with Garrett Wilson, this is sort of what we talked about, and I think Ryan and I even talked about this on multiple podcasts together, where the thesis with Garrett Wilson is he's going to lead the NFL in target share. The problem with the Jets offense is there's the potential for weeks like week 2. So with Wilson, I think the target share is going to be sustainable, but I think that you're also going to have to deal with some weeks where the offense just isn't working. I think that they have a good approach with Tanner Engstrand. I think that when Justin Fields is there, they're an offense that can put some pressure on opposing defenses. But I just think when it comes to Wilson, it's just not quite what we want to see. But he does have 2 games with over 22 points scored. And in every single week this season, he's had at least 8 targets. So, I mean, when you look at Garrett Wilson versus the wide receiver marketplace as a whole, he's a lot more of a bankable, predictable weekly asset than a number of these guys that maybe even some that were drafted ahead of him. So I don't think I'd necessarily be selling Wilson just to sell him. It would take a whole lot for me to sell him. I'm pretty enthusiastic about him moving forward. And they're starting to play Arian Smith a lot more, which is a guy that is sort of a big cardio guy, like a speed guy. Mm-hmm. So there's really not threats around him at all. Ryan, where are you at on Garrett Wilson?
I'm more in the camp, that it is probably sustainable in that, he's going to continue to be one of the most heavily targeted receivers in the league.
It's not just the targets. That's why I brought it up, is that it's the fantasy points, like 55, because JSN is getting the targets more so. And like, his rate is 42% of the fantasy points, 55% have gone to Wilson. And I kind of think that's where the team is going to settle, is like, they're not going to be scoring very many receiving fantasy points. And so if his rate can't possibly be 55%, and in fact, it's probably going to drop to like 38% or 40% or something like that, that's a pretty big difference than what we have so far.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And even through 3 weeks, we're still kind of in the realm where I hate saying, like, if you just take away the touchdowns and the good plays, but if you just took away the Garrett Wilson touchdowns in week 1 and week 3, I'm sure that drops a ton, right? That percentage drops a ton. So I don't know. Like, I think we're probably in too small of a sample for like that 55% to be especially meaningful, but yeah, I buy that he will be
It's
near the
meaningful
top of the
because
NFL in that metric.
that's his number. That's his stats. That's his fantasy points. That's why I bring it up, is because it is meaningful in people's minds. And I wonder if that number is just not representative of what we're going to get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's totally fair. And like to Theo's point a little bit too, I think Tanner Engstrand has surprised us pleasantly in terms of offensive design, but I also think that this Jets team is just always going to try to win through the run first. I don't think they're going to like that often, but there's going to both be weeks where they are like, yeah, LOL, we're at a minus 20% pass rate over expectation and nobody is scoring in the receiving game. And there's going to be weeks where Justin Fields just can't do anything, like in week 2 against the Bills. So yeah, to your point, I think it could be a lot more up and down for Wilson this year, but I still buy that he is like a top 12 wide receiver by the end of the season.
I think when it comes to Wilson, I think that the pivot for you to float out in your leagues, if you're looking to sell Garrett Wilson, then it's taking Garrett Wilson and using him to get Jaxon Smith-Njigba and having to give something slightly on top. I think this might also be the way to pivot off of him in Dynasty, where JSN, I just think it's going to be very sustainable. I think when we look at the end of the season, JSN can be a top 5 scorer at the wide receiver position, maybe a top 3 scorer at the wide receiver position, but Garrett Wilson just has a little bit more of a capped ceiling because of the quality of the offense and the style of the offense. So I'm really happy. But when you look at the other potential pivots, like, are you going to take a buy low on Ladd McConkey for Garrett Wilson right now?
Sure. I would be fine with it. I know that sounds crazy. I was going to bring up Tetairoa McMillan. You might be able to get T-Mac and a lot more for Wilson.
So I think that's a fine redraft takeaway to pivot down to T-Mac. I think that's actually a really, really sharp one, where I think at the end of the year, their scoring might be very comparable from like week 4 on. He's just a weird player to value because the role is exceptionally strong and there's not a whole lot of pivots that don't take a little bit more of a forward thinking. So I think he's you're probably more likely to try to use him as a tier up type trade. I don't know if I'm taking Ladd over Garrett Wilson. Where are you at on that one, Ryan? Ladd versus Garrett Wilson. I think I'm on the Wilson side.
I'll still be on the Ladd side here. I mean, I'm still just hanging on to, we are seeing the Chargers be a lot more aggressively pass heavy than we ever thought possible. I gave a take earlier that it might not sustain through the whole season, but them just being this pass heavy and knowing Ladd is as good as he is, I just can't imagine that he's being outscored by Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen through the rest of the season. Like, I don't know, a 3-week sample is just not enough to move me off of that prior of just how good Ladd is. So yeah, I'll still take Ladd narrowly over Wilson.
Let us know in the comments. Are you Garrett Wilson or are you Ladd McConkey? What way are you treating Garrett Wilson? Really, really an exciting one to talk about. Let's close it out with this one, guys. Last week, I had Dave Kluge of Football Guys, and we dropped our bold predictions for week 3 and the rest of the 2025 season. The show was a really, really fun one. If you didn't listen to it, go ahead and give it a listen. Make sure you're subscribed to Fantasy Football Daily. I'm dropping shows like this every single week. Also dropping a waiver wire show with Joe Dolan and Tom Brawley, a start sit with Graham Barfield, and then my solo show I drop. It drops for you every single Monday with my biggest takeaways from the week. Let's talk about a bold prediction from each of you guys. Let me kick it to Ryan. Ryan, get us started.
Yeah, so I hope this is bold enough. I never am sure like quite how far to go on these.
I'm ready.
But I think the Rams are like this year's version of the Bengals or the version of the Eagles that we saw a couple years ago, or the Dolphins even before that, where I think Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua just both finish as top 5 wide receivers in fantasy this season. Is that bold? Like, give me like a.
No, it's
need
bold.
To make it
That's
bolder.
bold.
Okay,
That's exactly what mine was going to be. Devontae has the most end zone targets in the league, and like everything's funneling through these guys. They both look phenomenal. That's literally what mine was going to be, but I didn't quite finish with the JSN, so I'm just going to go with JSN as my bold take. This is perfect.
JSN finishes how highly, Jacob?
Wide receiver 1, sure. Like wide receiver 1 overall. So what I've got on JSN, dating back to 2013, we have 4 instances of a wide receiver hitting these 2 thresholds through their first 3 games of the season. It's 4 or more yards per route run, through 3 games with an 80% route rate or higher. I think that qualifier is really important. It's not just like Deshaun Jackson getting huge chunk plays at the beginning of the year, or some rookie who's like playing half the snaps and putting up a huge yard per route run rate. It's a full-time player locked in as a wide receiver 1, averaging over 4 yards per route run through the first 3 games. The receivers are 2 of them this year. Jaxon Smith-Njigba all the way up at 4.8 yards per route run. Puka Nacua this year. And then 2015 Antonio Brown, 2023 Tyreek Hill. AB scored 388 PPR points. Tyreek scored 376. So that's obviously insane. I dropped the threshold to 3.5 yards per route run to give us just a bigger group. And it's still insane. The lowest score is 274 PPR points. It's AJ Green in 2015 in 16 games. So like the lowest score out of this group of 10 or so would have been like wide receiver 4 in points per game last year. The players are AJ Green, Larry Fitzgerald, 285 points, Mike Evans in 2018, 290. Tyreek Hill's on here 3 times with 334, 347, 376 PPR points. Deebo Samuel in 2021, 339. Julio Jones in 2015, 375 PPR points. Antonio Brown in 2015, 388. Cooper Kupp in 2021 with 440 PPR points. So that's 3.5 yards per route run or higher through 3 games. JSN could easily finish as wide receiver 1. Everything is locked in on him right now. Sam Darnold is playing well. The offense is playing well. Like we had a lot of questions about what this offense would look like, and so far it's working pretty well. And I think there's still a ceiling to it if we see more of the Clint Kubiak efficiency boosting stuff that we've seen in the past with play action and pre-snap motion. He's kind of eased his way into that. If he starts leaning into that, then like maybe the offense clicks even better than we've seen. I really like the route concepts for JSN. This was something I brought up on Beyond the Box Score last week, is that both his horizontally and vertically breaking route rates are up, which is weird. I was looking for players who had a higher horizontally breaking route rate than last year because H break routes are great. You get more targets, you score more fantasy points on those routes. Both his H and V break routes are up. What is that? It's that like static and shallow and those kind of routes, kind of not necessarily wasted routes, but not routes that are designed to get the player the ball. He's doing almost none of that. It feels to me, as I watch the offense and then also dig into all the awesome stuff of fantasy points data, it feels to me that Seattle is basically just like Clint Kubiak. Every single play has JSN in mind. Like every single play could be a JSN target. And then that's, of course, what we're seeing with the 50% target per route run rate. I wanted to bring up to Ryan, if as you look at Seattle and the design targets, so when we're talking about Kamara, he brought up that Kubiak likes to design screens to his running backs. We haven't really seen that. I'm curious if we're going to. I assume it's kind of like this pre-snap motion and stuff like that, where it's like, I hope it's coming. So far it hasn't. Don't really know why. It's just been JSN. 6 design targets for him, 1 design target for Cooper Kupp, 1 design target for Kenneth Walker. So as I look at all of this, it all feels really like it could be sustainable, and it's all signals of somebody who's in a truly unique role for fantasy point production. Like compared to Malik Neighbors, who just shattered records last year in first read target rates. His top rates in any given game were like 68%, 53%, and then he had 4 games between 45 and 47%. JSN already has rates of 67% and 46%. We're just 3 games in. And like I said, this is a guy who in the past, even with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett there, has given us games of 47, 50% because he can just dominate defenses when the game plan focuses on him. So it's just like all setting up really, really well for him to just keep doing this. He hasn't even really been getting like the touchdowns and stuff that would lead to huge fantasy production. It's mainly just that the role has been so good that he has to score at least 15 points every week. And I think it could get even more out of control for a variety of reasons.
And you just hit on something. If we just take a step back and look at how these games have gone, the first game of the year was that very low scoring game against San Francisco where Seattle was trying to take the air out of the football. Seemed like they were trying to shorten the game, get the win. Week 2, we saw again, Seattle in a very, very good spot. They end up winning the game on the road in Pittsburgh. Week 3, just sheer dominance over New Orleans. What's going to happen with JSN in a game that Seattle's trailing? This is not a perfect team. They're 2-1 this year, but there's going to be games where they're trailing and they're going to have to lean on JSN for like an entire half. I think those massive spike weeks could be coming. Ryan, I love your hot take was absolute fire. 2 top 5 wide receivers from the same offense, but got to unpack a little bit of what Jacob said your JSN takes off of some of Jacob's takes.
Yeah, so I kind of had the hints or like the pieces that I think I needed to put together like the JSN puzzle preseason, but I just didn't do it, or I didn't have like the guts to kind of make these calls. But yeah, the Kubiak offense, as Jacob is saying, has kind of just removed like all of the fluff that we got so annoyed with for JSN over the first couple years of his career, where, yeah, now he is no longer just the guy that is running the shallow underneath route that you maybe check down to and he gets like 7 PPR scam targets in the 2-minute drill. He's still getting the design targets and the PPR scam stuff, and that's awesome. But yes, everything here is just kind of built the funnel to JSN. Kubiak and the Seahawks are among the lowest rate of 11 personnel in the NFL. That sounds like, oh, that would be bad for wide receivers. No, it is amazing for a team's wide receiver one, because the fewer wide receivers that are on the field, and also the more blockers, fullbacks, whatever else it is, non-pass catchers that are on the field, the more those targets are going to funnel to that wide receiver one that is remaining on the field. So yeah, and it's not just like 12 personnel. It's also been like 2-back sets. Like Kubiak has kind of done just a mix here of all these different formations that are perfect, and yeah, that are just going to lead to per route efficiency for the wide receiver one. So yeah, I am with Jacob. I don't think I would rank JSN as my wide receiver one rest of the season, but yeah, he totally good bold prediction there. Puka is my wide receiver one rest of the season. The reason for that is honestly because Sean McVay is kind of doing a lot of similar stuff with Puka Nacua. Like, we're seeing the Rams in more 12 personnel. They're even more like at the top of all the play action and pre-snap motion charts and everything than they've been in seasons past. Like, it's kind of the perfect setup to just funnel targets to Nacua, and the Rams are also clearly very invested in just throwing to Devontae Adams in the end zone every single time they get down there. In week 2, it was like especially noticeable that they just did that like 4 times instead of handing it off at any point. I don't know if that was like one of their keys to the game or whatever, or like if Adams was complaining in practice about wanting a touchdown or what it was. But yeah, that is clearly their entire offensive game plan, is where you're just going to create maximum efficiency situations for Puka and throw a million end zone targets to Adams.
Puka has a career yard per route run rate above 3 yards for his entire career, over 3 yards. No receiver has ever had a 3-year span during the time I have the data available where they averaged 3 yards per route run over 3 years. He's done it in his first 3 years as a pro.
Unbelievable stuff. You guys absolutely crushed this one. We could talk for about 2 more hours, but I got to get you guys out of here. If you're not following Jacob or Ryan, you're really, really doing a disservice to your fantasy teams. Jacob, let everybody know where they can find you and what you have going on once again.
At JAGibbs_23, you'll find lots of video cut-ups. Like on the JSN thing, I did a video cut-up of Sam Darnold and a lot of quarterbacks looking at like their deep throws. They're not necessarily deep, but throws of 10 or more air yards through 2 weeks. And I noticed that like, wait, literally every single one of these targets is going to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And it is like he's getting way more downfield stuff. So trying to mix all of the film with all the data that we talk about here. And then the other thing I'll point you to is definitely check out Mastering Matchups on Thursday. If you like Ryan and I's content, we are crushing it. We're going to help you guys win some money at DFS this year. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, your show is absolutely crushing it. Ryan, let everybody know once again what you've got going on.
Yeah, at RyanJ_Heath over on Twitter. As I said, all my written content on fantasypoints.com. And yeah, please, guys, come check out Mastering Matchups. It's been an awesome show so far this season, even before we've had like a ton amazing of like sample sizes of data to dig into. Got some awesome calls. Jake Ferguson last week, Roma Dunze before week 2. We don't talk about Dontavian Wicks ever again, is what we learned also after week 3. But yeah, super fun show. Come check that out over on Beyond the Box Score.
Wicks is going off in week 4. Absolutely 100% going off.
Yes, I'm resigned to that reality. Yeah.
100%, guys. You just can't predict it. You can find me on X at the OG Fantasy. Make sure you're tuning in to School of Scott, the podcast I drop with Scott Barrett. You got to subscribe to that one. That's not on Fantasy Football Daily. That's on its own feed. Make sure you're subscribed to Fantasy Points YouTube, the fastest growing YouTube channel in fantasy football. You can find all of my shows there. You can find Ryan Heath on Dynasty Points every single week live. That's a really fun show as well. You can find my Dynasty show, Dynasty Life. We're everywhere at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your fantasy leagues this season.